Welcome everyone, Justin with LUN Studios here. So in this video, we're going to be covering a few things in regards to making a 3D logo using Element 3D. Now, typically, there's a lot of videos out there to help you with creating 3D logos and doing a lot of effects and working with ambient occlusion and shading and lighting. In this one, I'm going to cover more so the workflow and how to stage logos in a way that'll set you up for success and really tighten up your workflow, because time is money and you don't want to spend too much time breaking your back, killing yourself over trying to get a logo to work. All right, so let's get into it. So today we're going to be working with this eagle head mascot logo. In one of my previous videos, we covered how to separate the layers and get the masks to be crisp and really work well together. So now we're going to start by breaking into a little bit of getting the logo in a more dimensional look instead of just working with a flat design. So this way we really have to focus on separating some of the elements and layering them properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this up in a way that the layers are separated. The two-dimensional layers are separated in almost like a three-dimensional way. So we're going to, think of it top, middle, bottom. It's just going to work in a similar manner. So for starters, I think the way I want to design this logo is I want to have this border actually be an outside raised edge and have this red layer be almost like an inner section. We're going to start by actually getting rid of the shadows. Ooh, maybe not that way. I didn't realize it was shaped like that. So that's the other thing when you're working with someone else's logos. If you haven't designed it yourself, you may have to kind of go in and do a little shape manipulation. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by kind of marrying this all together so that it's one uniform. Okay, that's good. So let's do Shift M, and we're going to build that into a shape. Actually, let's, we want to keep the colors here just for reference later. So I'm just going to keep that right there. So we'll Shift M, combine these two. Okay, use I, copy that color, boom. Now let's also get rid of the shadow. We do not need the shadow because we're going to be creating most of the shadows within the actual emblem itself using ambient occlusion and the After Effects lighting. Move that out of the way. Okay, now we're gonna want, let's see, how do I want to do this? Maybe I'll put this one, I'll have the frame of the head also be a raised surface on the inside of this entire thing, but not raised as much as the border itself. So here, let's start by separating. Let's call this layer border. Okay, we're going to click that, send it on over. And then this is going to be inner surface. We will send that to that layer. And since the inner surface is going to be on the bottom, we'll put that on the bottom. Border will be on the top. Boom. Okay, we're on the right track here. So now let's do the eye, the head and the eye frame here. So we're going to have that be, that looks like, the shape looks pretty good. We don't have to really modify anything. It doesn't look like it's sitting under anything else. And it's going to be a raised surface anyway. So let's do the, let's change that eagle head. Okay, we're going to arrange, send to current layer. Put that just under the border since it's going to be a raised surface. Here, let's hide that real quick so I can get this eye. So the eye is going to be on top of the eagle head. Well, actually, you know what I might do? Okay, so with the eagle head, we want to actually hollow out the eye because it's not actually a separate piece here. So let's do another shape creation. Boom. Okay, we can actually delete. No, we'll keep the eye. The eye has to be there. Okay, so we create its own shape, copy the color over, boom. We'll send that to the eagle head layer. Boom. Okay, now we want to put that here. And now the eye is going to be indented. I want to do an indent. So it's going to be lower than this layer, but it's going to be higher than the inner surface. So let's actually send that here. Eye. Range. Send to current layer. And now we have this shape here that was left over. So let's just delete that. Okay, the eye is there. Don't worry, we will get to that soon enough. Now we want the eagle head, we'll say fill. We'll call it the eagle head fill. Okay, we're going to want to send this over. Beautiful. Now the eye is going to be above that. Now the beak. So the beak is a weird shape. So the thing that's okay about keeping a shape like this is since it's going to be recessed underneath the beak. So we'll do the eagle head here, and then we'll do the beak right below it. So when the edges bleed out into it, it'll actually just cross into the space. You won't see it. It'll hide relatively neatly. So that's important when you're trying to get edges to kind of just bleed into other edges seamlessly. But be careful with that, because when you're working with corners that meet at certain points, the edging could get a little off. You'll get gaps, you'll get weird curves and kind of harsh imperfections. Let's put it that way. So let's take the beak. Beak layer. Beak. Range, center current layer. Okay, now the shadow, we can get rid of this shadow because that's going to be in our logo. That's also going to be in our logo. So I like this shadow here. I want to keep it, but the border here is not going to accentuate that shadow at all. So we're going to want to give it some depth. So what I'm going to do is take the eagle head fill and this shadow. I'm going to do Shift M. And I'm actually going to remove it from there. Okay. So let's do eagle head fill. Now let's do eagle, whoops. I mean, I could have done it that way. Eagle chest accent. Range, send to current layer. Okay, let's remove this chunk here. And since it's going to be on the inside, I actually want to scale it up a tiny bit, so that it kind of fills out the space. You know, I'll actually move the points here. I want to overfill it. This is one of those situations where since it's going to be nested underneath it, overfilling is okay. I'm just going to quickly run through doing the rest of this. As you can see, it's very straightforward. You just got to map out how you want things to sit. Beak is going to sit underneath the body here. Or actually, no, it could sit on top of the... it'll sit on top of the body very, very faintly. All right, so we got the beak. Let's do the shadow of the nostril. Let's actually make the nostril... Let's work with some dimension here. So I'm going to take the beak. I'm going to make it without the nostril. Okay. Then we want this layer to be the beak nostril. I don't know if that's what it's called, but that's what I'm calling it. Beak nostril. And now we can get rid of this shadow. That's going to be its own thing. Actually, let's make that the same color as that. Beautiful. All right, so here we go. So we have the border. Boom. We have the eagle head. We have the background. Oh, I didn't name that. Let's name that inner fill. Got the beak, beak nostril, eye, eagle head, eagle chest accent. Oh, I did have inner surface. Oh, that's the copy. Let's get rid of that one. We don't need that anymore. Awesome. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 layers to work with that can be independent on their own, be their own individual masks. And when we're working with Element 3D, you have up to 15 custom layers that you can use for masking with each use of element. So if you want to be able to work these things together, some logos, some designs, you're going to have to figure out to mask similar, we'll say surfaces, heights, varying degrees of texture or fill, and really try and keep it within that 15 layer threshold. Otherwise, you're going to have a hard time really getting all of your elements to work. And some logos, listen, despite being as complex as they are, some of them look great. When you consider some logos that have a lot of minor details like text and things of that nature, you really want to focus on consolidating the layers in the most uniform way possible. So in this, like I said before, I pulled out some of the shadows that were unnecessary because since we're going to be making it 3D, we can create spotlights that will make those shadow effects. I wanted to add a little depth to the eagle here by keeping that little chest accent and the nostril, but I think we're good. So we have 8. So let's save it as is, and then we'll bring it on over to After Effects and start breaking it up. Okay, so we are in After Effects, and I've pulled in my eagle head mascot logo, Illustrator file. Here we have all the layers ready to go. Now they're not in the same order that they were when they were in Illustrator. Now they're actually in alphabetical order. So future note, if you want to do this, maybe number your layers as well. This way it'll keep it in an order that's relative. Okay, so we got our vignette, we got a background. Let's bring these things in. We didn't need eagle flat. That should be 8 layers. That is 8 layers. I'm going to take the time now to rearrange these a bit. So we wanted the inner fill to be bottom. Okay. The next step is going to be the eagle body. Let's open this up a tiny bit. Eagle head fill. Okay, and then above that is going to be the eye. Below that is the chest accent. Border is going to be the highest. Eagle head's going to be above the beak. All right, looks like we're good. Let's scale everything as we need it. I want to get the most out of the mask size so we can retain a bit of detail here. All right, select all of your Illustrator layers. Go to Create Shapes from Vector Layer. Boom. Now we can actually get rid of all of these Illustrator layers. Now we're going to use the technique that I used in our previous tutorial on how to get perfect masks. And this way we can really isolate each of these elements and bring them to their glory. So let's start with the border. Control-Shift-N. Masks, and pull out the path here. So we have 2 paths, which means we're going to need 2 masks. Okay, mask 1. Take the pick whip, path to path, click shape, hit OK. Delete the expression. I'm going to go ahead and do this for the rest of the logo. If you need a little more insight as to what it is I'm exactly doing right now, you can check out our Perfect Masks video in the After Effects tutorial playlist. And I will see you in just a moment. And we're back. Okay, so see a whole lot of nothing here. Well, that's because all of our masks are now done. So let's go ahead and make our element layer. So Control Y. Okay, element layer. Let's add element to it. Now what we want to do is we want to have these placed in an order that just keeps everything uniform. So we go to Custom Layers, Custom Text and Masks. So let's start from 1. You can even start from 2 if it'll make you feel more comfortable with how it's labeled down in the timeline. But let's just start from 1. So we got border. 3, oops. 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm just for each individual layer giving it its own segmented area. So now we have 9 different layers, or 8 different layers here. Layers 2 through 9. We can actually turn off the visibility of that. Now let's go into our scene setup and start putting this together. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder, and we're going to name it Eagle Head Mascot. We're going to add an extrusion. First extrusion, boom, call it border. And that by default is going to pick custom path 1. So let's do another extrusion. Do custom path 2. And just keep going down the line. So this is going to be Eagle Head. Extrude. There's gonna be a bit of moving around since they all share a different anchor point. Make sure you don't move it out of your folder because then it's going to appear as a different grouping. Okay, so right now we're just looking at the inner fill doing its thing, taking up space. So we're going to want to start to do is we're going to want to start to adjust the depth of things. Let's start with the inner fill's bevel. Let's lower the extrusion. I don't need it to be too heavy, so I'll just bring it down to 20 just to keep it at a even sink it in a bit more actually. Let's do like 0.05. I'll just type that 0.05. So now we're getting some depth here. Okay, here let's turn off some of these other layers. And we're going to work our way towards the middle. Keep the border on. Gonna work our way towards the middle here. So let's start with the eagle head, since that's going to be on top. So we're going to need to adjust that a tiny bit so that it sits within the border like it did before. And in some cases, depending on how complex your logo may be and how many small elements might be sitting in random places, it would be good to also create a layer that has guide points, little pins that you can create as their own mask. That kind of gives you an idea of where things need to sit. Kind of like pinning little needles into fabric and you know, if you're a seamstress or sewing or working on upholstery or anything like that. In a similar sense, you're literally putting pieces together. It's like a puzzle. I like puzzles. Puzzles are fun. I like totals. So let's keep on moving through here. Do the beak. So the beak is going to sit in a little deeper here. So we're going to want the extrusion to be a little bit less. Let's do 0.6. Yeah, 0.6 is good. We could even keep the nostril where it's at. Let's turn the bevel off as well. We don't need the bevels. Let's turn all of these bevels off. Now the bevels are going to throw you off. Be mindful of that, because it is going to try and balloon out the sides. Now in some cases you may want that. You may want the bevel. But in many other cases it's just taking up too much information that's unnecessary. And it will bloat, and it will make your... This one I actually do want to bevel a little bit. Okay. The other thing to note as well, you're going to want to upgrade, you're going to want to raise the path resolution so that everything looks smoother. What this is going to do is it's going to add more vertices and faces to give you a better detail with curves and corners and all of that. So now you can see it's a lot smoother. It's a lot more refined around the edges here. I'll just show you again with the eagle head. If I go down to, we'll say normal. Look at that. Look how chunky that is. Look how chunky that is. So do extreme, raise that up. And you can even add more segments, which will add more vertices and faces. And now this is all entirely dependent on your system and what it can handle. I'm perfectly fine with just keeping it at 0 for now. I'm not trying to go crazy with this, so we'll keep it at 0. Okay, let's get back to the beak now. We want maybe a little bit of bevel since there's the nostril. We want it to have a bit of a curvature to it. Maybe make it a little sharp. Yeah, let's lower the curve. There we go. Let's reposition that to sit. Better in there. So this is what I mean when you have these little corners and these lips. You want to make sure it sits in a way that's kind of uniform and hugs it well. And that will all change. Positioning will all change based on your bevels and based on the curves and what you adjust. So it's very important to make note of that. Let's do the nostril. Bring it on up here. Whoop, that's a big nostril. Let's we can reduce the bevel. That's unnecessary. All we need to do, well, actually, that doesn't even matter. Let's just lower the extrusion so there's a difference in depth here. We might even want to make it shallower, but more than the background. I think the background was what, 0.05? Yeah, let's do like 0.10, 0.1, if you will. Beak is good. Let's do the eye. Bring her on up. The eye, what you might want to do is not drop this in as much, since it is not going to be sitting that far from the eye socket, if you will. Keep that relative. Now the fill. The fill we're definitely going to want to lower the bevel of, since it's just going to be sitting on the inside. It's not going to be too crazy. Let's do 0.1. We'll also drop that in so it's behind the beak but not too far behind. 0.45. I like it. Now how are we looking over here? You want to make sure that it's hugging these surfaces nicely. Okay, that's definitely sitting in a good spot. And then finally, we have the eagle head accent. Bring it on down. That should fit just fine. Let's get rid of the bevel. Oh, I already did get rid of the bevel. Let's lower that extrusion. We'll do 0.1. Maybe a bit more. Let's do point. Don't want to make it too intense, but we definitely want it to be noticeable. Okay, there you have it. There is the plain, untextured. You could even make it three-dimensional, depending on how you balance your vertices. If you need it to spin or flip or do anything like that, be mindful that it's two-sided. So you might need to adjust accordingly. But I believe if I did this right, the extrusion typically works both directions in an even way, so you won't need to work with a Z. The only reason it looks different is because of the shading. So just be mindful of that. All right, let's get to texturing now. Let's do maybe like a metallic surface for the border. Do clean metal gold. Clean metal gold. Actually, we need the, I didn't adjust the eagle head extrusion, so let's drop that a tiny bit. Let's do maybe 0.8. There we go. So it nests inside there pretty nicely. Oh, and then I didn't do the eye. Oh, well, now that I just moved the body, I need to readjust the eye. So let's get this extrusion to right there. Okay. Let's also do the same texture for the eye, but we're going to, no, maybe even, let's do like glass. What do we have for glass? Translucent. Let's see. Rough glass. No, that's not bright. Ooh, let's do a light. Let's not do a light. I forgot that that changes a lot of things. Bright light. There we go. Make that a light. Let's go back to metal. Let's do the beak that color. Now the shadow in here, we're going to want to actually make that a shadow. So let's get the nostril. Let's do like a plastic matte on that. Keep it dark. Okay. Then back to the metal. We'll do the same thing for the body. Give it kind of a weathered look. And then for the accent, we'll also do a matte. Now the background, the inner fill, I want to use almost like a carpeted material. So let's see what we got for fabric here. Oh, look at that. Now see, that looks terrible. But here's a trick when it comes to using these types of things. Let's go into the inner fill. When you want to make a texture look a little more refined or less dirty, clumpy, however you want to call it, you want to go into your bump map. Okay. You want to tweak a little bit so you can kind of get the shadows balanced in the way that you like them. And then you want to go into the actual bump. Let's click the UV repeat. We'll do 10 by 10. Hit OK. And then we're going to also want to adjust the diffuse 10 by 10. Okay. So that looks a bit better. It looks a bit better. There are different ways you can do it. You can get higher resolution textures and the way that they'll spread out. 10 might even be too much. I feel like there's... No, that's... I feel like that's good. Here, let's actually lower... Let's lower the diffuse and stick to the bump map, and let's make it our own color here. Let's be cleaner. Let's give it like a nice... almost suede velour. And then we can bring the diffuse back in a tiny bit just to give it a little bit of texture and grit. There we go. It's looking nice already. Alright, beak. So at this point, all we're going to be doing is changing the reflectivity color in a way that's a little more adhered to the colors of our logo. So in this sense, what we could even do is go into Illustrator. Here we go. We got the colors right here. So let's double click, copy that hex code, go back into here, paste the hex code, color match. All right, what do we got next? Let's go to the border. Okay, that's going to be the same color as the eagle head, so that will save us some time. Go into the reflectivity color, paste the code, boom. And you could even copy material, go to the eagle head, paste material. All right, now we got the body. I'm going to do the same thing. Eagle head fill, reflectivity color, paste that. There you have it. I think I went a little too dark with the inner fill, so let's color match that as well. Got a little overzealous, folks. I really liked that carpeted material. And there you have it. So now it's got a nice weathered texture to it. It sits within itself rather nicely. Might even brighten up the eye a bit. Make that a little more white than yellow. Okay, and here we are. We now have our logo. We can make it do all sorts of things. Let's go in and let's make it drop down and spin. How about that? Super simple. So we'll go into World Transform. Let's bring it out of the screen here. We'll have it come down, take about a second. Have it overshoot it a tiny bit, go up a couple, maybe like half a second. Have it go up. We're just going to have it kind of hover in place a couple times. Go up. Now you could definitely go in and mess with the Beziers and finer details of the movement and flow. For now, we're just going to do it like this. Down, drop downs. We're going to open our World Transform. I'm just going to make all of these easy eases by hitting F9. Let's take a look at that. Cool. That's a little rough. That's better. Ooh, that was a little quick. A little quick on the uptick there. Let's spread that a tiny bit. Actually, let's spread it out a bit more. If you select all your points here, your keyframes, hold Alt and drag one end, you can actually stretch out the motion quite a bit. You can obviously make it smoother and work with different... Ooh, I just don't like that drop. Maybe if I F9 that. Oh, I think it's because I have a... Yeah. Well, either way, that's fine. We'll stick with that for now. Let's do some spins. Let's get some world rotation here. So we're going to want to rotate on the Y. Yes. We'll have it rotate. Let's have it rotate twice. Up to this point. Whoops. Yep, rotate twice. And then we'll have it do a prolonged single rotation. All right, there you have it. You got your dancing logo going crazy, doing its thing. I use the same technique for the intro sequence of these videos. I just did more camera movement and worked with more ambient occlusion, which is a whole new realm that you can work with. Here, let's actually bring this forward in Z space just to give you a quick idea of what ambient occlusion can do. So real quick, we're going to make a camera. Oops. Obviously, since we've adjusted Z space, we need to bring it back to where it needs to be. Work from there. Okay. Bring it a tiny bit closer. I also have depth of field on and full render, so it's going to take a bit. So let's just put on half for now. All right, let's adjust the focus distance so that when it's straight and facing us, it'll be fully in focus. Let's find the endpoint. Boom, that's the endpoint. Okay, so we'll work there. It's in focus. Now we can let it do its thing. Cool. So let's keep it like that. Perfect Z space for the most part. We'll click on element. We'll go into our render settings. Go to ambient occlusion. Enable ambient occlusion. Let's do medium quality, just because I don't feel like blowing up my computer right now. And then we're also going to want to incorporate a light, because this will focus. to bring out a lot more of the detail. So I think what I want to do is I want to make sure that the end point of the light is where I want it to be. Everything else will just be accent, and we'll be able to work with it from there. I want to get a bit of shadowing. Let's actually do, let's do 2-point lights. So we'll have one there. And we will duplicate that layer. And we'll bring it across and down. So now we've got some 2-point lighting. Cool, looking great. Let's go back into elements. Let's also work out our shadows. So we'll turn on shadows. Boom, there we go. Now it's building its own shadows. Now there's a lot you can get into in terms of the detailed ambient occlusion and shadows and how the fall off reacts. So a lot of this is trial and error to really get your feel for how you want it to look. Let's do some, lower the gamma. No. 5 was fine. Here, let's go into, no, we don't want to do that. Map size. We'll do 8 shadow samples here. I'm gonna just put this on high, on full, because if you look here, you know what, we're gonna have to actually make that ultra. We're gonna have to raise the map size so that it doesn't look all messed up. We're gonna increase the blur radius to 1.2. Maybe a bit more. We could even probably do 2. Yeah, there we go. All right, we have spotlights. So now we have shadow. Let's do, okay. Depth bias, -0.4. Very nice. All right, so I'm gonna let this render and we'll be back. Look at the preview. And there you have it. So that is our final, this is our final render. Let it play through a few times so you can really look at it. A few tips when it comes to designing an intro or when you're working a logo. I know I kind of just did a straightforward drop, spin, pendant style effect, what have you. But when you're looking to animate your logo, you want to do something that's relevant to what you're representing. So in the case of sports or a team emblem, if you will, doing something with motion and keeping it fast and blurry and moving around can really accentuate the motion of the game that they're representing. So in terms of other styles of logos, think of what the company represents, what they do, what the logo looks like. Can you make it look organic? Can you do things that move it in a way that when you look at it, you say, oh, I'm pretty sure that's what this company does. So you get a better first impression when you see it, and it ties it more to the company itself. It makes it more personal. So that's very important. So be sure to consider that as well. All in all, I think it's a worthwhile process. I would say with some of the setup and other things that I was doing, this took me a total of maybe an hour, tops. So if you're looking to improve your workflow, I know people who can do this in probably half the time, but at the same time, I was trying to kind of organize this tutorial alongside trying to make this happen. But I mean, even in terms of recreating a logo, doing something simple like this eagle logo, it could still take you a good amount of time to get all your layers set and make sure everything's balanced well and your points are in place where they need to be. You know, cross your T's, dot your I's. Shouldn't be too difficult of a process as long as you can put the time aside and organize your layers properly. It will save you so much hassle. It will save you so much fighting, and yeah, hopefully you'll make some awesome logos using these techniques in the future. That about wraps it up. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, as always, post them in the comments below, and I will answer them as soon as possible. If you liked the video, please be sure to like and subscribe to view more of our videos in the future. Take care, everyone.